Hi and welcome to Straight Talking Law podcast. My name's Abi and I am joined by Gary Mackay, who is the Director of Technology and IP here at Kidwells. Okay, let's start with the obvious question. What is AI?
I think the first thing to know that AI as a term is hiding quite a lot of different things. The AI that we're really talking about today is not the Terminator, it isn't Ex Machina or anything like that. We're nowhere near that yet. What we're really talking about is what everybody knows. It's your ChatGPTs, it's your Claude, it's the Gemini, it's all of those platforms. Generally, they're referred to as large language models, which essentially means they've just got a lot of data in them. Also known as generative AI, which is because it's generating images, it can generate sounds, it can generate recordings. But that's the AI we're talking about today. We're essentially talking about a lot of data that's been collected that has been able to be analysed, and they can use that to generate new content.
Okay. And how do businesses use AI?
It's mixed. I think it's fair to say that some businesses have taken it all on board and are spending a lot of money investing in it. You only have to see the information from the US about the billions that are being put in place now by Amazon, by Microsoft, by Meta, etc., to have an indication of just how much potential there is here. Some businesses are using it in their day-to-day operations to reduce staff, to increase productivity, etc. Others are using it more in a haphazard way and not quite sure what to do with it. So I think there's an element of everyone's trying to find their feet. What we have got is a lot of money being invested into something. I'm not totally sure that businesses have really ever got, at the moment, a lot of businesses have got a plan to decide how they want to move it forward.
Those businesses that maybe aren't using it or aren't using it to its full potential, why do you think that is?
I think a lot of businesses at the moment just don't know what to do with it and don't quite understand the legal implications. We're living in a world where our legal system has to catch up. I mean, if you take that we're reliant on legislation like the Copyright Science and Patents Act, which goes back to 1988, in order to try and legislate and deal with something in 2026. So there is an element there that I think there's a nervousness around it. I think there's also a concern as to, well, how can I use it? What will it bring? I can spend a lot of money on a lot of these AI platforms, but not necessarily understand whether it's actually going to generate me more money or alternatively save me more money.
Okay, and what are the kind of legal implications for businesses that are looking at using it or looking at using it in more detail?
I think one of the problems with lawyers generally is there's a tendency to look at the risk. So there's always a tendency to look at the downside of it, and there are downsides, and we'll talk about them. But there are also a lot of positives in there to bear in mind. So I think when businesses are looking at it, there is a little bit of a balance between the positive and the negative. The legal implications are potentially huge. If you take the generative AI models, they get their information from somewhere. And what they're doing is they're generating and they're doing things like scraping at the internet, etc., for data. And all of that has the potential to be infringing copyright of third parties. It could be grabbing confidential information that shouldn't be in the algorithms, and so all of that information is bit by bit being collated without anybody actually understanding where it's necessarily come from or what the consequences of it are. The other big risk is that, as we see with a lot of information on the internet now, it's not necessarily correct.
Yeah.
And so what you've got is the danger or the potential danger of reviewing information and then finding out that it's actually incorrect. So we've seen this in the legal industry where cases have been cited and those cases don't even exist because AI has made it up to fit the question. And so all of those sort of things are becoming issues that businesses need to be aware of. The other big one is data privacy. If you are using AI and you are submitting information into, whatever it is, chat or whatever, you've got to be sure that that information isn't being shared or used elsewhere. You certainly don't want it being part of any training algorithms, and you could expose yourself to considerable fines if you do so. So there's a lot of balance between ownership and the right to use, data privacy, and confidentiality. I think there's sort of three areas that businesses need to sort of consider.
And I think you focus there on kind of the legal implications and perhaps the negatives, potential negative sides of AI, but actually what are the positives for businesses?
I suppose it depends which way you look at it. I mean, I think AI is probably the nearest thing I've seen to a revolutionary change outside the origin of the internet. I think this is revolutionary. I think for businesses that engage in it and use it, it will change the way they do business. It will, and it's a negative and a positive depending which way you look at it. It will undoubtedly change the jobs market. Certainly at the automation stage at the moment, automated jobs are at risk, and I think there's no point of trying to deny that. I think secondly, but that leads to profitability because it can cut down the cost to a business. I think the other thing is the speed and the delivery of content will improve and increase, and again that comes down to productivity. The other thing you've got, and we've seen it on various cancer drugs and things like that at the moment, is that you're seeing something that was originally taking 10 years, 20 years to come to fruition is now coming to fruition in 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
Simply because we've now got the facility in order to analyse and assess and produce results way beyond anything we ever could do. And that will get better as quantum computers and everything become more mainstream. All of that's going to improve.
So so in your opinion, that AI could potentially take these, the jobs of those people that are potentially doing automated processing?
I think it'd be misleading to suggest it isn't going to change the job market.
Yeah.
Whether it's Elon Musk level of change is a different matter, but without any doubt at all, it's going to change the jobs market. And I think businesses are going to need to adapt. However, we've seen through history, the Industrial Revolution, etc., that while some jobs disappear, other jobs get created. So there will be a shift in the job market as opposed to a wholesale. That certain levels will disappear. I don't think it's going to be quite like that.
And I think the AI would need to potentially become more advanced in terms of, we still have the problem with accuracy. It's not something necessarily that's going to happen overnight.
I described it as a sulky teenager. There's a way of putting it, is that, we've moved beyond the child in nappies.
Yeah.
It's beyond that. But it's that sulky teenager now that spits out stuff that isn't necessarily true or accurate all of the time, and you have to deal with the old temper tantrum with it. So, but it will get better and it will get more advanced as we go, without any doubt.
Okay. And in terms of wrapping up, can you give any practical advice to businesses who maybe are using AI or thinking about using AI?
I think the first thing is don't ignore it. To businesses, I think there's those that are not using AI at the moment, they definitely need to be doing so, or at least looking at how it could work in their business and before they dismiss it. I think the second thing is that businesses have a tendency that because it's new technology that they jump on the bandwagon without necessarily knowing why they're jumping on that bandwagon. And I think businesses would be well advised to take a step back and assess where they think it can help, and then just move through, take one area first, see how it works there, fine-tune it, and then go from there. I think the third thing is that if businesses think that their employees are not using AI, they're being totally misled. It doesn't matter what policies they've got, etc. I can pretty much guarantee that all businesses will have employees that will either use it because they can, or will use it even if they've been told they can't. Okay. And so I think it's better to embrace it and regulate it internally than it is to try and just tell everybody not to use it and then have to deal with the ramifications and not having the processes in place. Which then leads on to what processes is talking about. I know businesses don't like new policies, but if there was ever a policy that is needed, it's AI, both in terms of which AI platforms they can use, and any restrictions they want to place on that platform. You know, for example, never allowed to put any confidential information, or never allowed to use information that includes personal data. There also should be steps to deal with verification at the moment, especially on critical data. So, you know, not just relying on everything it produces, because as we've seen, it isn't necessarily accurate. It's getting better, but at the same time, there is always the potential for it to be inaccurate. So you need to bear that in mind. So I think they're the sort of key things I would say to businesses. Go with the policy, not for policy's sake, but just to put structure to things.
Yeah.
And go down the road of making sure you've got clear rules on how it can be used and in what manner it can be used. There are other practical things that they need to do as well, and that's keeping a log of how AI is used.
Yeah.
Because it tends to be that businesses will allow it and then have no ability to regulate where that information originally came from. So having some kind of register that maintains the use of AI so that people know where it came from, you know, allows you to have some form of audit trail to go with it if there ever is an issue.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you very much, Gary, and hopefully that gives an insight into how businesses can use AI and the practicalities of it and the considerations. Thank you for joining us. Please go follow and subscribe. We are on Spotify and YouTube.